After the immense success of 1998's Resident Evil 2, Capcom instantly started production on the next mainline entry in the series. Alongside it were a few side games also in development that were meant to flesh out the story of the series, but not be numbered as a main entry like RE2. The mainline title was being produced by 2's director, Hideki Kamiya, as he was seen to be the right man for the job. However, just like the game that was originally intended to be Resident Evil 2, it was cancelled because of the recently announced PlayStation 2. But Capcom didn't want their fans to wait long for another game in the series. So what could they do to continue the hype that Resident Evil 2 created if they were waiting for the PlayStation 2's release in March of 2000? Well, after the original release of 2, they started to develop its DualShock version. And during that time, there were murmurs of a standalone expansion to add to the game's storyline. This is where the story of this game gets its start, as it shifted from an expansion for RE2 to a full-fledged title. The production for this expansion fully began in late 1998, but that would all soon change when the main title, directed by Kamiya, would be scrapped, and then fully restarted as Resident Evil 4. The other RE titles being produced at the same time were all pushed to be released at later dates and on newer consoles. And since RE4 was being made, we can figure that something had to be done, since some people would probably notice something was up if the series went from Resident Evil 2 to Resident Evil 4. With the complete shift in projects happening, Capcom decided to slap on a 3 to the expansion that was being made by a small group of developers led by Kazuhiro Aoyama. With all eyes now on this main entry in the series, Capcom decided that Shinji Mikami would be given the role of producer yet again, and the role of director would not change, with Kazuhiro Aoyama maintaining that role. But this is a Resident Evil title, so there needs to be a lot more issues in its development. And like clockwork, there was. These issues all started because the fast-paced development of Resident Evil 2 wasn't all rainbows and roses, and it left a bad taste in many of the development team's mouths. This led to a mass exodus of staff members, and instantly kneecapped the development of Resident Evil 3. Now that there weren't many of the old staff left from RE2, a new team was made, and comprised of pretty much only new faces of about 20 or so people. Another thing they had to worry about was getting a script going for the game, as the previous script writer for the series, Noburo Sugimura, was busy working on another script for another project, which led to Yasuhisa Kawamura being the writer for the game. Kawamura was considered a new hire at the time, and had no prior experience with creating a script for a video game, besides helping edit the script for Dino Crisis 1. A saving grace for the project was that they already had a game engine that worked, as they decided to reuse the one from Resident Evil 2. This proved to be a small glimmer of hope though, as another problem reared its ugly head. After a few good months of development, producer Mikami and production supervisor Yoshiki Akamoto began butting heads, because Yoshiki started to change certain aspects of the game. The first change was the title of the game, because Mikami wanted to give it a pre-Kingdom Hearts-ass name called Biohazard 1.9 plus 2.1, while Yoshiki wanted it to just be named Biohazard 3. A quick side note before I continue on is that Resident Evil is called Biohazard in Japan. So if I refer to a title with the name Biohazard, I am still talking about Resident Evil. Mikami chose Biohazard 1.9 plus 2.1 over Birth by Chains Recoded Distance because he wanted the game to be a side project that took place before and after the events of Resident Evil 2. Thus the 1.9 and 2.1 being added to the title. The second change was that the game would retain the playstyle of Resident Evil 2. Crazy, right? An RE game playing like an RE game? What an odd choice to make. Jokes aside, the reason this was a change is because Mikami said he wanted the game to be more indie and play differently than the rest of the series. The concept of this actually sounds quite interesting though, as you would have been able to explore an ever-changing city being ravaged by the outbreak. Buildings would get destroyed over time, enemies would act unpredictably with the environment, and amid all the chaos, you would have to find items you lost when the environments changed around you. The third and final change was with the game's development time. Yoshiki wanted the game to release 5 months before the PlayStation 2's launch, which meant that a couple of months needed to be cut off of development. Shinji Mikami was not happy to say the least about all of this, and after trying to negotiate with Capcom higher-ups, he quit the company and stated, "Screw this shit, I'm gonna make a better Resident Evil, with blackjack and hookers." Alright, he didn't actually say that. His time out of the company pretty much lasted as soon as he walked out of the door, and he came right back under the stipulation of absolutely nothing, because the changes Yoshiki made were there to stay. And just like that, Mikami was back with the company, with the benefit of a bigger team to work with, which was needed because of the cut production time. More changes would come in the form of script rewrites, with certain plot threads being scrapped completely, like the nightmare scene Jill was supposed to have at the start of the game. This scene would have been pretty brutal at the time, as it consisted of Jill shooting herself in the head. The director, Kazuhiro Aoyama, didn't like the scene one bit, which ultimately led to it being scrapped. But funnily enough, it would find its way into the remake of the game that was released in 2020. 6 months before its release in Japan, the game was shown at the Tokyo Game Show, and a playable build of the game that was missing certain features that would be in the full release was at the Electronic Entertainment Expo, or E3 for short. Resident Evil 3 then released on September 22, 1999 in Japan, November 11th in North America, and February 21st, 2000 in Europe. The game was showered with critical acclaim, not as much as its previous entry, Resident Evil 2, but still proved a sales juggernaut, with a staggering 1 million in worldwide sales by early October. And even though it had a late release in the UK, that didn't stop it from going gold shortly after its release. Going gold in the UK signifies that it sold at least 200,000 copies, just in case if you didn't know. The game would then go on to sell over 3.5 million copies for just the PlayStation version by June 2012. They would then port the game to Windows and Dreamcast in the year 2000, and they did not receive the same acclaim the PlayStation version did. The Windows version was slammed for its shitty controls, and the Dreamcast version was criticized for its lack of a graphical update. A GameCube version was released 3 years later, as part of an exclusivity agreement between Nintendo and Capcom that had them remake the first game and re-release RE2 and 3 on the console, leading up to the much-anticipated Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 3 stars Jill Valentine from the first game, and she would be the only protagonist this time around, which is new to the series as both RE1 and 2 had 2 playable characters. However, they added new features to the game to help with the lack of a second scenario. The first is something called life selection. The way this works is that at certain points in the game, you are given 2 choices and a short amount of time to make it. And depending on what choice you made, it would impact certain story and gameplay elements, with one of them even altering the ending of the game. There are a good handful of these throughout the game, and they really do help with the replay value. The next thing added were elements of randomization. Each playthrough is unique as certain items, enemies, and even puzzles will be randomized. This means that some items or enemies may appear in one section of a playthrough and be completely missing or replaced by something else in the next. The puzzles, on the other hand, will still be in their original locations, but have the solutions changed and can have items required for them placed in different spots throughout the game. There isn't an infinite number of solutions though, and after a couple of playthroughs, you will have cycled through all of the puzzle solutions, and you will come to appreciate the limited solutions, especially with certain puzzles that if you've played this before, then you know which one I'm talking about. And if not, then you will find out soon enough. There are a few more additions to this game that I will bring up in due time, with the major addition being saved for when it pops up for the very first time. But if you know this game, and the title it's based on, then it will not be that much of a surprise. Alright, let's get started with the game's story. The way I'm going to tackle this is by going over all of the live selections and their outcomes together as they happen. That means when one of these selections show up, I will showcase my first playthrough's decision and what it changes in the game, and then cover the opposite choice right after before advancing in the story. Some choices have long outcomes though, so I will continue that first before going back and making the other choice. I'll inform you when this is about to happen in the video as well, just in case. A quick note to add here is that you will see Jill in different outfits from the other scenarios, so don't be shocked when you see her sporting some disco attire or something other than her normal outfit. Another thing about this game is that you can complete objectives in different orders, which can lead to missable cutscenes. I will be showcasing those at their appropriate times. I hope that this explanation is making sense, but if not, then here's a quick example. At some point in the game, the ground breaks beneath Jill, and she quickly grabs onto a ledge to avoid falling into the pit. But right after, two giant boxes start sliding towards her. She is then given the decision between trying to pull herself up before they hit her or to let go of the ledge. If I choose the first option, which has her pulling herself up, then she completely avoids the two boxes and is able to continue forward normally. But before I go further into the story, I'll go back to that same live selection and choose the option to let go, which has Jill falling into the pit where she has to find a ladder leading out of the hole. Once these 2 points converge, I will continue on normally with the story. So to sum it up, after covering the whole entire first decision and its result, I will go back and do the same with the second until both scenarios converge. That was just a very short example though, while others can lead to a lot longer sections. I'll be trying to showcase everything this game has to offer, but if for some reason I miss one, then please accept my apology here and let me know what I missed in the comments. Something else I want to bring up before I start going over the story is a simple question to you. If you've seen my other videos, then you know I summarize the whole game's story and critique it throughout. I want to know if that is preferred by you or if you'd want a more cut down summary leading to a shorter video. I'd greatly appreciate any feedback from you, as I want to make my videos as entertaining as possible as they can be for you. Alright, enough wasting time. Let's go over the story of Resident Evil 3, Nemesis. It begins at the height of the zombie outbreak in Raccoon City. The police attempt to quell the horde while Umbrella flies in their own armed forces to deal with the situation. Both groups get their shit kicked in, as they are clearly ill-equipped to deal with zombies. This leads to Jill's explosive introduction as she narrowly escapes her apartment building blowing up. But this is just the beginning of her problems though, as she finds herself on the other end of a locked door and surrounded by zombies. She busts through the door and runs into a nearby warehouse, where she is met with Dario Rosso. And I don't know if it's just me here, but Dario sounds like Newman from Seinfeld. I mean, just have a listen to this.
What do you think you're talking about? I just lost my daughter out there. All right, you go ahead. You keep it secret. But you remember this, when you control the mail, you control information.
Anyway, Jill tries to get him to come along with her to escape the city, but Dario, is scared shitless of being eaten alive, and decides the best course of action is to lock himself inside a shipping container to wait out the apocalypse. Good thinking, my man. Jill doesn't have time to convince the idiot, so she leaves without him, and in order to get out of the warehouse, she needs to unlock the door. The key to the door is upstairs, and this is where one of the game's new additions is shown. Inside the save room are these red containers that contain gunpowder. In Jill's inventory is a reloading tool that can be combined with the gunpowder she just came across to make pistol ammo. It's a lot more in depth than that though, as there are more than just one type of gunpowder. The one she came across is Gunpowder A, the easiest one to find. But there is also Gunpowder B and C alongside it. Gunpowder B, which is rare to come across, comes in a yellow container and makes shotgun ammo. but can be combined with gunpowder A to make gunpowder C. These can also be combined into bigger containers of gunpowder. You can make a giant container by combining multiples of A, B, or C, or mix and match them. A few good examples are mixing 2 A's and a B gunpowder to make a container used to make a good amount of shotgun shells. Another is mixing 2 B's and an A to make a container that makes a hefty amount of pistol ammo. Gunpowder C, which is marked by a blue container, is something different altogether, as combining 3 gunpowder C's makes magnum ammo. This goes even further in depth when you add grenade launcher rounds into the equation. Mixing A and C gunpowder makes flame rounds. Mixing B and C makes acid rounds. And C together makes freeze rounds. There are a ton of combinations here, and if I went over all of them, then I'd have to say gunpowder and rounds an ungodly amount of times. So I'll just leave it there. But I'm still not finished talking about making ammo with the reloading tool, as there is another element of it I need to talk about. As you find yourself making ammo throughout your playthrough of Resident Evil 3, the more of a specific ammo you create, the more Jill will create for you. For instance, if you create shotgun ammo for the first time with just 1 gunpowder B, you will create 7 shotgun shells. But after a few more times of doing this, the number of shells created will increase, because Jill becomes more proficient in making them. Eventually, she'll be able to create something called enhanced ammo. These are obviously more powerful than their standard versions, and both the pistol and shotgun have them. For me personally, I'd love this addition to the game, as it makes you have to think on what type of ammo you're going to need now and in the near future. Will you settle on pistol ammo because of its large quantities of powder, so you're able to deal with the hordes of regular zombies? Or will you try and push forward with a low amount of ammo in order to find better powders to combine with it? However, there will eventually come a time where you are producing way too much ammo and are able to blast through most of the enemies with ease.
Holy Jesus!
I feel if they lower the amount of ammo you produce at a time, then it would have made for a more tense experience. But that's just me though. This isn't the end of the ammo talks just yet, as there is more to talk about. But that will have to happen a bit later, when another element of this game is revealed. So, with that long gunpowder tangent over with, let's continue on with the story. Outside the warehouse, Jill is able to walk the streets of the ravaged Raccoon City, and can see all the damage that has been done leading up to this point. The whole entire town is devoid of life, with the groans of zombies being the only sounds heard. After getting jump scared by someone running from a horde of zombies, Jill comes across her first weapon, that being the horror game staple, the shotgun, which is able to one-shot zombies if you aim for their head when they're close by you. Right next to it is lighter fluid for her non-existent lighter. So I'm guessing she's not a smoker then. After a short walk through the beautiful alleyways, gunshots can be heard nearby, and when Jill catches up to them, she sees the person from earlier fleeing the scene once again. Thankfully, they don't get far, as they get cornered by a zombie inside a bar. The person is none other than the famous scene fleer, Brad Vickers, who, thanks to Jill, only gets bitten once, which never leads to anything bad. While talking to each other, Brad for some reason decides to be as vague as possible and says that he is coming for them and that they are all going to die. Thanks for the vote of confidence there, Brad. Before he flees yet again, he lets out one small detail about who he is after, and it's apparently the members of STARS, which so happens to be only just him and Jill, as they are the last 2 members in Raccoon City. What a lucky time to be alive. Jill swipes a lighter off a nearby counter and continues through the city, where she eventually comes across a door that is tied closed with a rope. She puts the lighter fluid in her newly acquired lighter and sets it ablaze. But suddenly, a nearby gate comes crashing down, and a horde of zombies attack her. Any time now. Well, while we are here, I can talk about another thing added to this game, and that is shootable objects in the environment. Every so often, there will be objects like these red barrels that you can aim at to help clear areas of enemies. Most of them will be explosive, but there are a small amount that differ from them. But you best be careful though, as they can damage you as well. So as long as you're careful and keep your eyes peeled, then these will help tremendously. A short trip past the door, Jill finally reaches the RPD, and an injured Brad shows up right after, but is blocked off by the best feature of this game and its main antagonist, Nemesis. This hulking behemoth then grabs poor Brad and, well, how do I say this? Penetrates Brad's mouth? Okay, I'm sorry, but there was no better way to word that.
Oh, that hurt.
However, there are worse ways, like Brad getting completely face-fucked. Nemesis turns its attention to Jill, who now has a decision to make. This is the game's first live selection moment, and the choices you get are to either stand and fight Nemesis, or turn tail and run into the RPD. If you choose to stand and fight, you are able to leave at any moment, but before you do, you can grab Brad's card case from his corpse. And once inside, the game will have Nemesis jump scare you for bitching out of the fight. With Brad's RPD card in hand, Jill is able to get the code for one of the lockers in the evidence room. This outcome is pretty much the same if you choose to run at the initial choice. The only difference being that you miss out on Brad's RPD card, and must find Jill's in the operations room. Regardless of the card you use, the outcome is the same, with Jill getting the code for the locker. If you actually stand your ground, then you are in for one hell of a fight, as Nemesis is absolutely no pushover, and this is made even more difficult with your lack of equipment at this point. Nemesis is able to charge after you and can inflict a ton of damage rather quickly. It also has a grab attack that can either throw you down behind it or far in front. If you don't spam your buttons quickly to get Jill off her sorry ass, then Nemesis will just pick her up right off the ground, and once Jill's health reaches a certain point, Nemesis will execute her with its hentai tentacle attack in the same exact way it did with poor Brad. If you manage to come out on top though, then you are rewarded for your efforts. Nemesis will drop parts for the Eagle pistol. However, you need another set of parts to actually make the damn thing. How do you come across these parts? Well, I'm glad you asked. Throughout your experience in Resident Evil 3, Nemesis will hunt you down and make your life a living hell, just like Mr. X did in RE2. But in that game, all you had to do was go into the next room to avoid him. This is not the case here, as Nemesis will follow your ass through multiple areas in order to kill you. There are only a few exceptions where he won't follow, the obvious one being the safe room. But it will make its presence known even while you're in there. That means you'll be questioning your life choices because you just put yourself in a corner, as most safe rooms only have one exit. And you can bet your sorry ass that it's waiting for you right outside that door. Nemesis also isn't as slow as poor old Mr. X, so when you see it, you know it's coming at you like a proverbial wrecking ball and will right hook Jill into the year 2000. Each time Nemesis appears, you are able to stand your ground and fight it. And each time it goes down, it will drop invaluable items that you can use. This is where you can come across those other pistol parts, and a multitude of other items afterwards. But I'm getting ahead of myself here, as Nemesis has only gone down once. Another thing you'll likely end up accidentally using during this fight is the game's newly added dodge feature. And the reason why I said accidentally is because it seems like it works only half the time and when you don't want it to. The major issue with it is that it isn't just a simple button press to use. Instead, you need to press the aim button, of all things, at the right moment before an enemy attacks you. And if done correctly, or in my case, accidentally, then Jill will do one of 3 animations depending on the enemy type. This can be a normal dodge, a duck, or result in her pushing the enemy away. Another glaring issue is that if you happen to accomplish this seemingly impossible feat while in a corner, then you'll go absolutely nowhere, and still get the shit kicked out of you by Nemesis. Thankfully, there is another way of activating this dodge mechanic, and that is by pressing the action button while already aiming. However, this also works like shit, because if you need to reload, then Jill will do that over the dodge. To be honest, I don't know what the hell they were thinking here, as there could have been a better button combo to use to get this to work. But alas, it's not in this reality. Anyway, with there being room to breathe, Jill can grab Brad's card and use it for the locker code. And with that, we have converged paths. While Jill walks through the RPD, I also think now is the best time to talk about the cutscenes. If you played RE2, then the ones in RE3 look exactly the same. This was after they got over the whole live action stuff of the first game, and went with animating the cutscenes in their stead. It seems that they also got more comfortable using them by this point, as this game has more than RE2 did. And let's be real here, Nemesis may look imposing in the game's engine, but it looks absolutely nightmarish with these cutscenes. I honestly don't know how I managed to play this game as a child, but I guess maybe it's the one reason why I'm so desensitized with horror media in my current age. Truthfully though, I look back on these with a load of nostalgia, and believe they hold up quite well even today. But then again, I was never one to complain about graphics that much. Oh look, it's Marvin's corpse. A report he is holding goes over the theft of a gem that is used to decorate a clock by the town's main gate. But the whole investigation and its culprit meant a whole lot of nothing, thanks to the zombie outbreak. Which means, one of the items sitting inside the evidence room is the gem from the report. The other item of note is locked inside the safe that we got the code for earlier. It's the key to the Star's office on the second floor. And once inside, Jill grabs her trusty lockpick and the grenade launcher from the weapons locker, which has a 50% chance of being the Magnum. On her way out, the communications board lights up, and Jill overhears someone named Carlos asking for a report. But the signal quickly goes out. Well, with nothing left to do in the RPD, Jill starts to make her way down to the first floor, but hears glass shatter right as she nears the staircase. The music then becomes very ominous, and as soon as she passes by the window by the stairs, Nemesis comes crashing in with a goddamn rocket launcher in hand. This is yet another brutal fight, if the fucking rocket launcher didn't give that away. If you shit yourself from the jump scare that just happened, then you are in luck, because there is a safe room nearby. This is one place Nemesis can't go, so you can sit in there and leave poor Nemesis out all alone for as long as you'd like. Here's a shitty edit I made to showcase this encounter.
Let me in! Let me in!
In a few minutes, bitch!
If you did make this choice, then I have some bad news for you. And it's that you have to leave at some point, which leads you on a crash course with Nemesis. Granted, you can always run away from it, with the goddamn thing quickly chasing after you, but the weapon parts are too good to pass up. So while we sit here and watch me struggle to fight Nemesis, there is something that has always bothered me with this scene. Right before Jill comes down the stairs, a giant crash can be heard, which I assume was the glass from the window. But as soon as we get down there, the window is intact, up until Nemesis comes crashing through it. Obviously, the glass shatter sound effect we hear before actually fighting Nemesis builds up a ton of tension, and would be sorely missed if it wasn't in the game. But I just wonder what they were going for with this addition here. I know, this is a small complaint, but I always wondered about it. After a couple of attempts, Nemesis goes down once again, dropping the other set of parts needed to create the Eagle. The Eagle is a fast-firing and possibly higher crit chancing pistol that sadly loses its utility pretty quickly at this point in the game. While it's a nice weapon and all, it's better to produce shotgun and grenade ammo from this point on. There is also another issue with this weapon, but I'll talk about that later. If you do decide to use it, then know that there are worse options in this game, but also a lot better ones. Outside the RPD, Jill can use her lockpick to advance further into the town. But if you decide to go all the way back to the warehouse where you first started, then you will come across poor Dario dead as a doornail, because the moron left his little safe sarcophagus for some stupid reason, and managed to get eaten. The plus to all this is that there are tons of goodies inside the now unlocked container, and alongside them is Dario's journal, which outlines him as a complete shithead, who values himself above his deceased family members, which includes his daughter, for fuck's sake. He laments about how he should have been a writer instead of a salesman like his mother had him be. But who really gives a shit about that, as the dude was a douche. So at least we don't need to feel bad for him. Getting back on track here, Jill unlocks the door forward with her lockpick and comes across the body of an Umbrella mercenary. Apparently, this guy was set to be executed for reasons unknown to him, and right on the day that he was set to be shifted off his mortal coil, Umbrella swooped in and saved the guy. And by saved, I mean thrown from one shit situation into another, as his ass was shipped off to the zombie-infested hotspot of Raccoon City. During this poor dude's final moments, he wished that he would have been executed all the way back before Umbrella plucked him from death row, as he saw it as a mercy killing when compared to being sent here. He then offed himself so that he wouldn't become another zombie. So now, we know the types of people Umbrella is using for their own personal military, as it seems that they are using people that have no other option, which is pretty on brand for Umbrella. Now, at this point in the game, there are two paths to take to trigger the next live selection choice. The first one has Jill entering a restaurant, and after opening up the basement with the fire hook she obtained from nearby, she is met with an actual factual live Umbrella mercenary. He introduces himself as Carlos, which is the guy we heard on the radio inside the Star's office. But Jill isn't quick to trust him, since he works with Umbrella. But he informs her that he and his fellow members were actually sent here to save the remaining civilians of the city. The two would talk more, but are interrupted by Nemesis, which leads to the live selection choice. The two choices are to either run and hide in the newly opened basement, or hide inside the kitchen, which I think the developers meant dining room, but whatever. If you choose to hide in the kitchen, the two will run into the next room, and Jill will throw a candle that is sitting on a nearby counter into the kitchen where there is a gas leak. This ultimately leads to an explosion and defeats Nemesis. Carlos reprimands Jill on the basis that she could have killed the both of them, but I think this was a win, because you going with this decision gives you a free item drop like if you down Nemesis normally. If for some reason you decide to stick around, Nemesis will get back up and you will have to fight him once again. And this time, there is no item drop, so it's best not to loiter. Outside the restaurant, Jill asks Carlos why they are really there, and he reaffirms that it's to rescue civilians. Jill then angrily points out that Umbrella caused this, but their conversation is once again cut short, as they hear a giant crash from inside the restaurant. Before going their separate ways, Carlos asks for her to join him and the remaining mercenaries, but makes no mention of where. Thanks a ton, Carlos. If you decide to hide in the basement, the Nemesis will destroy the kitchen himself, which causes a water pipe to burst and start filling up the basement that Jill and Carlos are now stuck in. With Jill's quick thinking, she spots a ventilation duct that she can crawl through. Carlos helps her up, and the two crawl their way out into the shopping district. Past this area is the Raccoon City Press, but most of the inside of the building is blocked by a fireproof shutter. So Jill must engage in a box-moving puzzle that Resident Evil is so well known for. But this one has a massive difference, and that difference is that instead of moving a box, she must now move a stepladder. Groundbreaking stuff, I know. And I use the term puzzle very loosely here, as she only has to push it in a straight line leading to a power switch for the shutter. With the shutter now up, Jill heads to the third floor and finds the other gem that was taken from the gate clock that was mentioned in Marvin's report. With both in hand, she inserts them into their respective slots, which unlocks the gate. Now for doing these tasks in the opposite order. If you decide to go to the Raccoon City Press before the restaurant, you will come across Carlos here instead. And for some reason, the lazy ass is lying unconscious on the floor. He tells Jill that he is glad to meet her here, and while walking towards the exit, she asks the big brain question of who he represents, as if the symbol isn't plastered right on his back. Carlos says it's Umbrella, and after Jill repeats his answer to him, he asks for her not to look at him that way, which we're just gonna have to imagine, because Jill's face always gives this blank look due to it being a PS1 game. Their conversation is also cut short here, thanks to Nemesis and the live selection choice. The two choices are to either jump out the nearby window or hide in the office where she found Carlos. If you decide to jump out the window, the duo thankfully land on top of trash. Carlos makes the moment even worse by stating that he isn't into that pain is pleasure thing. Yikes, man. Before he runs off, Jill says she has to ask him something, only for him to make the moment even more terrible by claiming that he knows she wants to ask him out, because all the foxy ladies love his accent. The actual question is far from that, thankfully, and it has to do with why Umbrella sent them to Raccoon City. Just like the previous scenario, she tells him that they are responsible for the outbreak, but Carlos claims that the mercenaries are in fact here to rescue people, but Umbrella may not have told them the whole truth. He then tells her to join them without saying where once again, and disappears into the night. Since Nemesis wasn't dealt with, you can either go back up in the office to fight him, or head in the complete opposite direction. If you chose to hide in the room where you found Carlos, then Nemesis will get completely fucked by an explosion that launches its ass straight into the window that looks into the room you're hiding in. This also counts as a Nemesis defeat, which results in an item drop. And just like the restaurant, Nemesis will get back up if you sit around for too long. Regardless of what option was made, you must head towards the restaurant to grab the gem that is now in the basement, since its location is swapped depending on where you went first. With the gem slotted, we are now at the same spot in both scenarios. And before we continue on any further, I'm curious how the people of this city were able to use this gate if any of the gems were taken or missing. It just seems odd to have a lock based on this type of system. As what we read in Marvin's report, the people of this city weren't above stealing these gems. So did they just have a bunch of spares sitting around? Or did they have to wait for them to be found so they could open the gate? I am once again asking questions that don't really need to be answered, because this is a damn video game. So I will just end that there. Jill heads through the gate and comes across a broken down cable car. Inside, she meets up with another Umbrella mercenary named Nikolai. She informs the guy that she ran into Carlos, and she is met with sexism.
How did a girl like you manage to survive?
Nice. She says that she is with Stars, and this seems to pique the guy's interest, but he says nothing and walks away.
Is someone wounded back there?
No shit.
On the other side of the cable car is an injured member of their group. Jill uses her best bedside manner by telling the poor dying son of a bitch that his injuries look bad. The guy then starts to experience hallucinations due to his blood loss, only for Jill to pull a 180 and say that everything will be okay.
Safe now. Everything is gonna be okay.
Waiting in the other train car is Carlos, who wants to work with Jill to escape the city. The other guy, who is still standing, says she can't be trusted. But after Carlos manages to convince him, due to the fact that their group is down to him, Carlos, and the dying dude, whose name is Mikhail, he reluctantly agrees and tells Jill that their plan is to head to the extraction point located at the clock tower. From there, they will give the signal for a helicopter that's nearby to pick them up. The issue is that they can only reach that location with the broken down cable car that they are in. Carlos hands Jill a side pack, which gives her extra inventory slots, and leaves her with the task of finding everything needed to fix the damn cable car. The items needed are a fuse, machine oil, and power cables. The latter item can be found on the way to the town gate, so that is the easy shit done with. The other two items, however, aren't that simple. To obtain the machine oil, there are 2 steps for it, as the game requires you to use an oil additive on the machine oil before it can be used on the cable car. So, Jill needs to grab a wrench from inside the cable car and use it to detach this lovely JPEG of a fire hose off a wall, and take it to another location to use it to put out a fire blocking a pathway. This path leads to the Umbrella sales office, where Nikolai is killing off another member of their crew whose name is Murphy, which is unimportant. The poor guy begged not to be killed, but Nikolai claims that he was about to turn into a zombie. Very suspicious if you ask me, and to Jill as well, but she chooses not to do anything about it at this time. Instead, it's puzzle time. The storage room is locked with a password, and there are 3 different solutions to this puzzle. In order to find the password, all you have to do is turn on the nearby television. Yep, that's it. Not really a mind teaser now, is it? The three solutions are just different products that are shown on the screen. Those can be Aquacure, Sasprin, and Adravil. Whichever one you get, you just type it into the computer to complete this mind-bending puzzle. Inside the storage room is the oil additive. But on Jill's way out, the place is swarmed by zombies, and we can hear Nikolai scream out as it happens. On the plus side of this, the area does highlight the addition of the shootable objects pretty well, as there are 2 steam valves that can be shot to cut down the horde. This section could play out a bit differently if you met with Carlos at the Raccoon City Press instead of the restaurant. Or if you did meet him at the restaurant, but chose to escape Nemesis through the basement, as Carlos will be here instead, and be the one to have to kill the now turning Murphy. Carlos is affected by this a lot more than Nikolai, and runs out of the building in what I can only describe as a child's temper tantrum. Beyond that, the area plays out the same. With the additive in hand, Jill heads to the gas station to get the oil. On the way there, she must go through the parking garage where she got the power cables. This is where the live section example I went over at the beginning of the video takes place. The ground gives way below Jill, and she grabs onto the ledge to avoid falling into the pit. But the issue gets worse when 2 crates have their revenge for me giving them so much shit about being in Resident Evil puzzles all the time. They do this by sliding out of the back of a van towards her. The 2 choices are to either let go and fall in, or to climb up. If you decide to climb up, then Jill manages to avoid the 2 crates and falling in the pit. The live section ends there, and you can just continue on like nothing ever happened. But if you decide to fall in, then you have to travel through a small sewer section, where you come across the skin of some giant-ass bug that's been left behind. There's nothing else down here, and once you climb out of the sewer, you find yourself right outside the parking garage where you can continue forward. A small and pretty much pointless live section event. I personally think they could have scrapped it and forced Jill to drop into the pit, because she can then discover the bug skin that will hint at future events. But that's just my 2 cents into the matter. Once she's at the gas station, Jill finds the doors blocked with yet another fireproof shutter.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
So, you just have to place the crank in the nearby slot and crank that shit. Except, she's gonna want to have the wrench on hand, cause this shit happens. Carlos meets up with Jill inside the gas station, but shortly after, a horde of zombies come from the only direction out of the area. Carlos decides to show off and runs outside to deal with the situation. This gives Jill ample time to deal with the next puzzle in the game, which is a button press lock that requires you to only get the square above the highlighted letter to glow. It's pretty much trial and error here, and after you do it 3 times, the door will unlock and allow you to take the machine oil from the case. If you decide to go out and help Carlos with the horde before solving the puzzle, then you're going to be disappointed, as they have already been dealt with. Sadly, our hero Carlos paid the ultimate price while doing this. Okay, not really. The dude just fell asleep or some shit after the battle. Kind of weird to do, but okay. He then heads off once again while you go back inside to get the machine oil. As soon as you grab it, fate deals Jill another shitty hand, as the garage in the next room has gasoline all over the floor, and for whatever reason, the electrical wire left on top of it sparks a huge ass fire, prompting Jill to get the fuck out before the place blows up. This scene could have played out differently here as well, because once you're inside the gas station, you'll either come across Carlos or Nikolai. It really depends on whether you met Carlos at the restaurant and didn't escape Nemesis through the basement, or met him at the Raccoon City Press office and didn't choose to jump out of the window to escape Nemesis. If you chose the opposite of these, then you will come across Nikolai instead. Personally, I like the Nikolai scene better, because he goes to huff the gasoline in the garage and gets caught in there once the fire starts. This scene is made even funnier to me because it glitches out, and we can see Nikolai's arm through the wall. After the gas station explosion, we then mix the oil additive with the machine oil, and that scratches off one more item on the list. This just leaves the fuse, and the way to get it is super convoluted for some reason. It requires Jill to press a switch below the statue of the town's mayor, Michael Warren, which gets it to lower its arm that is holding a bronze book. This needs to be taken all the way back to the front of the restaurant and placed in a slot in order to trade out for a bronze compass. We aren't done yet with this asinine bullshit though. And now, Jill needs to go back to the statue of the mayor and put the compass in where the book was. This gets even crazier when the statue turns around and reveals a fucking big ass battery. I have absolutely no idea why this is here, but I'm guessing it's to power up the statue to pull this type of bullshit. The battery is then placed in a slot in the maintenance area so it can power an elevator leading to the substation. The game must have a hard-on for shutters because there's 2 more in this fucking building, and the way to open them requires you to solve the Transformer puzzle.
I'm running away from home. My parents are mean. Where will you go? I'm not sure, but I'll show them.
That's right. You'll show them how mean you can be.
Bumblebee! Now I know.
And knowing is half the battle.
The Transformers!
Not those Transformers. The shutter on the right is marked as high voltage, while the one on the left is low voltage. The terminal nearby has the number 50 on a small screen, with 3 other screens afterwards with multipliers in between them. There are also 2 switches that are marked red and blue. Red increases the number, while blue decreases the number. In order to open up both shutters, you need to get the final results of 120 volts for the right shutter and 20 for the left shutter. The solution for the high voltage is red, 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 blue, and red, blue, blue, blue for the low. Past the right shutter lies the Magnum, but if you happen to get it at the STARS office, then you will find the grenade launcher here instead. Behind the left shutter is the sought-after fuse, which is needed for the cable car. However, after you complete the first voltage solution, the game throws another live selection choice your way, as a mass of zombies try to break their way through the fencing right outside the substation. Your 2 choices are to either head to the emergency exit, or to increase the electricity output. Whatever the hell that means. If you go with the unknown here, you will get rewarded with a scene where the gate gets electrified and pops the heads off the zombies.
Nice.
Doing this, though, will alter the electrical output for the puzzle, and change the solution for whatever voltage you didn't do first. So the solution for the low changes to red, red, blue, blue, and for the high, red, red, blue, red. If you opt for the emergency exit choice, then Jill will just bust through a rusted door on the other side of the station leading out towards the street she came in from. 2 things can happen here. You can either be saved and then attacked by Nemesis once you get outside, or there's absolutely nothing out there, and you can be on your merry way. With all the items obtained, the cable car can now be repaired. But before we do that, there is a missable scene with 2 variants that involves the injured Umbrella mercenary Mikhail. If you return to the cable car without having all of the items, then one of 2 scenes can play out. Mikhail will be fighting off a horde of zombies, and the way this scene changes is if you happen to destroy the explosive barrel that is sitting by the cable car. If you did, then after he deals with a small group of them, he throws a frag grenade at another approaching group to kill them. If you did leave the barrel intact, then the scene will start the same, but instead of him throwing a grenade, he will kick the barrel towards the zombies and shoot it. After either of these scenes, Jill will reprimand him for fighting in his current state. He explains that he lost his squad to them and refuses to stop fighting, even though he is injured. But Jill points out that the zombies are also victims in this scenario, and that he is working for the company that caused it. Mikhail says that he is just a merc, and doesn't actually work for them, and that no one here should be taking the responsibility for the shit situation. Jill then helps lift him up and takes him back inside the cable car to get some rest. This is another reason why this game is my favorite in the series, as many people may have never seen this scene before in their life, as you'd usually just want to grab all of the items before returning to the cable car. Another thing to go over before Jill's wild ride on the cable car is Nemesis, and the rewards you get for defeating him. By this point in the game, you'll have come across him numerous times, and hopefully downed him just as much. I've already gone over the Eagle pistol, but there are a lot more rewards than that. The next drop after both pistol parts is the first aid box. This helpful item can store up to 3 first aid sprays at a time, and can be refilled with more whenever you come across them. He will also drop a second one of these at a later point in time. The next highlight is the shotgun parts that he drops. There are 2 sets of parts just like the Eagle pistol, and once you have both of them, then you can create the Western Custom M37 shotgun. This upgraded shotgun has a higher rate of fire and quicker reload than the standard shotgun. It also has this beautiful lever cycle that looks like it's straight out of the Terminator 2 movie. The problem with the Western Custom and the Eagle pistol is that they cannot use the enhanced ammo. This is an extreme downside to the weapons, as once you can craft these ammos, the standard weapons that are able to use them become more powerful, which makes the Western Custom and the Eagle obsolete in my eyes. I'm sure everyone has their favorites, and I do as well. It's just the enhanced ammo being limited to the starter weapons was a questionable decision. I get that they did this for balancing reasons, but it sucks to get these awesome weapons just to end up dropping them shortly after, because they can't hold the stronger ammo. Beyond that, there are 2 more notable drops from Nemesis, but that will be after the cable car segment. So let's cut off my complaining for now. On the way back to the cable car, the ground once again starts to shake beneath Jill. And just like at the parking garage, it gives way, with Jill falling down into yet another sewer. But this time though, we find what's been causing all of these earthquakes. It's a giant ass worm. You need to activate 2 switches in order to activate another switch to call down a ladder leading out of this hellhole. But it's not as simple as it sounds, as this long-ass tan creature has these holes that it can come out of to hit you in the face, which pretty much makes it a glory hole.
A glory hole? What's that?
Where the hell did Jack find you anyway?
Santa Monica Boulevard.
Figures. Well, you just go put your face up to that opening and I'll show you what a glory...
No. Let's not show them that. Anyway, this fucker can hit you multiple times, which quickly drains Jill's health. You can try and fight it, but the camera angles hate you here, and will do their damnedest to hide the Alaskan bullworm off screen. If you manage to do enough damage, then the jackass will go away, leaving you alone to press the switches and call down the ladder. I'm gonna be honest here, I absolutely hate this section, especially since you had to fight Nemesis right before it. So if you didn't save or bring enough healing items, then your ass is getting sent back to whenever the hell you saved last. Alright, let's fix this fucking cable car. With the fuse, mixed oil, and power cables put in, Carlos finally shows up, now that the actual work is done. As an apology, he gives Jill red roses.
These are for you.
Or I guess in this case, red grenades. Which are flame rounds if you didn't know. Jill then gives him the tragic news that Nikolai won't be joining them for the rest of his life. Carlos takes the news pretty hard.
I understand. I'll operate the cable car.
After that awkward silence, the two then move on and start up the cable car. But not even 30 seconds into their wild ride, a giant crash is heard and felt from the second car. Mikhail screams out, and Carlos decides to let this be a ladies first moment, as he refuses to move. What a chicken shit. Jill reluctantly heads into the other car, and to no one's surprise, it's Nemesis once again. She nopes the fuck out, which leaves poor Mikhail to solve the problem himself. This involves him getting the shit beat out of him, and right before he gets a face full of tentacle, he blows him and Nemesis up with a grenade. This knocks Nemesis off the train, but as I'm sure you've guessed, Mikhail didn't survive the encounter. The blast from the grenade also damages the cable car, so now it's unable to stop. This means we are in for yet another live section decision, and this one leads to multiple changes in the next area. So the way I'll cover this is by going over the whole segment for the first choice, and once the area is completed in that scenario, I'll come back and go over the changes for the second choice. The choices here are to abandon ship, or in this case cable car, by jumping out of the window, or to use the emergency brakes, because Carlos is an idiot and didn't think to use them. The choice I made was to use the brakes, which leads to Carlos jumping out of the train and leaving Jill inside it alone as it crashes through a wall. When she awakens, she finds that she is in front of the clock tower, which is where the helicopter will come pick them up once the signal has been given. Inside is a chapel, where Jill finds the winder key, and right outside there is a dining room where she finds Carlos. The dude is starting to crack, however, as he believes that they aren't going to be rescued and that they should be able to dictate when they die.
You don't get it.
Thankfully, Jill slaps some sense into the man and asks if he's just going to give up. He tells her that he isn't, but decides to once again run off like an upset child. Jesus Christ, Carlos. In the main hall of the clock tower, Jill finds the mine thrower weapon. As its name implies, it throws mines that can stick on walls or enemies. It does a good amount of damage too, but the issue is that it has numerous downsides. The first being that it's the only weapon in the game that you can damage yourself with. The second is that it is unable to be reloaded until it's fully used all the ammo in its magazine. The third is that there is hardly any ammo for it, and you are unable to craft any yourself. The fourth and final issue, which I guess could be a benefit in certain situations, is that the mines have a delay before going off. Like I said, this could be a good thing if used correctly, but most of the time you'll find yourself using quicker and more dependable means to dispatch your foes with. Alongside the mine thrower is a bunch of papers detailing the evacuation process at the clock tower. Umbrella apparently has a helicopter station in one of the suburban areas nearby, and will head to the clock tower once the bell is rung. So now we know what to do in order to escape Raccoon City. By the stairs in the main hall are two music boxes. They both play the same tune, but one of them sounds like complete shit. They also have something written on the inside of them. The shitty sounding one has dud written in it. And no, that wasn't me completely fucking up a voice line. And the good sounding music box has udada written in it, which you should make a note of for future reference. Past all that is a bedroom where the second train car crashed into. Behind one of the paintings is yet another key, this one being the bezel key. Up the stairs, we come across the fan favorite and arachnophobes' least favorite enemy, the big ass spiders. I'd blur it out like I did in the RE2 video, but I'm lazy. So instead, let's just fast forward the video. After dealing with those hairy things, Jill ends up on a balcony overlooking the courtyard. He then uses the bezel key on a small slot to call down a ladder leading up to the cog room. And there are a few things of note in here. The first is a silver gear sitting on a shelf. The second is a music box that plays the same tune the smaller ones did in the main hall. This is the next puzzle, and the solution is to recreate the sound of the music box with the writing udada on it. The U's stand for up, and the D's stand for down. So if you place the pins in the correct order, then it should sound like this. If done correctly, then a slot should open up, revealing the Chronos key. The final thing of note is the cog mechanism in the back of the room. If you insert the silver gear into it by itself, then nothing will come of it. So you must find another gear to place on top of the silver one to get this to work. With nothing else to do in here at the moment, Jill heads back down the ladder and right into the next live selection choice. I will go over both of these here, as it doesn't change depending on your choice back at the runaway cable car. Jill runs into Nemesis, and you must quickly decide to either use the light or use the cord. Pretty vague explanations if you ask me. If you use the cord, then Jill will tear one out of a spotlight and throw it into the water that Nemesis is standing on. This results in it getting electrocuted and falling unconscious. This is another scene that also counts as you defeating Nemesis. So it will drop gear for you just like at the restaurant or press building. The gear it drops here can be quite powerful depending on how many times you defeated it thus far and if this is your first playthrough. If it's your first and this is the 7th time you defeated Nemesis, then it will drop the unlimited ammo assault rifle. If it's beyond the first playthrough, then it will drop a case of infinite ammo that can be applied to any weapon of your choice, which can be absolutely broken depending on what you choose. If you choose to use the light, he turns the light on, which blinds Nemesis. Jill then runs over and pushes its sorry ass off the balcony, which completely ends the Nemesis segment. If you chose the electrocution option, then it leads to Nemesis hunting you right after you leave the balcony area. And if you defeat it once again, it will drop jack shit for you, as this still counts as the same Nemesis segment. So I'd recommend running past the douchebag. Back on the first floor is a locked green metal door. In order to get past it, Jill needs to combine the Chronos and Winder keys. Through the door and past the spider hallway is yet another puzzle, and this one actually requires some thought compared to the others. There are 3 paintings and 3 balls. Ha! The 3 paintings depict 3 goddesses. The one on the left is the past goddess, the middle is the current goddess, and the one on the right is the future goddess. To the right of the paintings are 3 maiden statues holding their respective balls. Ha! There is a crystal one, an amber one, and an obsidian one. In order to complete the puzzle, we need to set the middle clock to 12, and depending on what time it starts at, we need to place the balls in different orders. This can be a little confusing and hard to explain, but when you place a ball in a painting, the time of the middle clock changes, and depending on the ball type and painting combination, it will move the minute and hour hands accordingly. I'm gonna be truthful here. I just brute force the shit out of this until it works. I feel like I'm a caveman clanking rocks or some shit with this puzzle. So, after you magically complete it, the middle clock opens and reveals a gold gear. The 2 gears can now be combined and placed in the cog mechanism back at the top of the clock tower. The bell then starts to ring, which signals the nearby helicopter, and also signals the end of this game. Kinda quick, but okay. I want to thank you guys for watching, and, Oh, shit. Well, never mind. I guess things aren't over yet. While we're here, am I the only one who finds this scene kinda hilarious? The reason I find it that way is because of the reaction Jill gives when the rocket hits the helicopter. It's just so nonchalant, like a small inconvenience that can be circumvented quite easily. Maybe it's just me, but I don't know. So with the planned escape now ruined, Jill finds herself in a shitty situation, as Nemesis isn't just going to shoot down the helicopter and leave. It leaps from the tower and infects Jill by penetrating her with its long purple tentacle. Thankfully, Carlos jumps in to save Jill from Nemesis, and saves me from having to explain that last sentence. Things don't go smoothly, however, as Carlos is injured during this fight. But before falling unconscious, he destroys the rocket launcher that Nemesis wields. And that's all he manages to do, as it gets back up from the explosion and starts attacking Jill. If you've saved up all your strongest equipment, then this fight is pretty damn easy. If you didn't, then get ready for a brutal fight with Nemesis, and a string of complaints from me. Since this is an old school Resident Evil game, then you know it uses tank controls, which aren't a huge problem if you get used to them for the most part. However, there are parts in this game where either the camera, the controls, or even both fight you alongside the trials and tribulations the game throws at you. This is one of those parts. The problems arise right from the start, as Nemesis is only 5 feet away from you, and you can either unload whatever weapon you've got on you, or try to make some space between you two. This sounds easy, on paper, but when you actually play the damn part, it's not so, because when you move to another location, the camera and controls switch alongside it, which can be a huge issue, as every second counts when trying to bring down Nemesis, who's charging right after you. That's tough already, but wrestling with the controls doesn't make the encounter any easier. Another issue is that Nemesis can grab you and chuck your sorry ass straight into another camera location, which can be quite jarring and can lead to the aforementioned control change. Now, this is my most played Resident Evil game, so I'm used to all of this stuff. but I can definitely see all the issues with this from a new player perspective. However, there is a bright light in this ever-consuming darkness, that being the quick turn function. I'm bringing this up now because this is one of the spots that highlights its usefulness, and because I forgot to mention it earlier. Great job on my part. Alongside the useful dodge mechanic, this was added because of Nemesis, whose quick movements would have been hard to counter without it. The controls for the quick turn don't change during camera transition, so it will become your old reliable throughout the game. All you need to do is press down and the action button at the same time, and Jill will pull a 180, so you can quickly run away instead of slow turning like the previous two entries. With some effort, Nemesis is put down once again, but Jill passes out due to her being infected. Cue Carlos waking up after all the hard work is done, who notices that Jill is lying face first into some broken off chunks of wall. He takes her to the chapel and lays her down on the altar, telling her that the location is safe and that he will take care of her. Whatever the fuck that means.
Don't worry, Jill. This chapel is safe.
So now we play as Carlos, whose duty is to create a vaccine for Jill. But before we get to that, let's cover the changes to this section if we decide to jump off the cable car instead of using the emergency brakes. The first difference is the starting location, as you will find yourself in the bedroom where you found the bezel key. Since this scenario is different, so are the item locations, as the bezel key has been swapped with the winder key. You will also find Carlos in the library, as opposed to the dining room of the other scenario. Funnily enough, he also has a sunnier disposition here as well, and doesn't need to get some sense slapped into him by Jill. And because he didn't run away like a child, he gifts Jill cryo rounds for her grenade launcher, which will come in handy during the altered Nemesis fight. Speaking of the Nemesis fight, the difference here is that Carlos is nowhere to be found. This means you will have to fight Nemesis, who is still wielding his rocket launcher. I guess the cryo rounds that were handed to you earlier are a way of saying sorry preemptively. After Nemesis is dealt with, Carlos makes a badass entry by leaping through fire, which loses its badass factor once we realize that there is nothing for him to do except apologize to an unconscious Jill. We are caught up once again, and assume control of Carlos, who comes equipped with his trusty assault rifle and a handgun. We make our way to the Raccoon City Hospital, where we come across one of the series' staple enemies, the Hunter Betas, which are absolutely no joke to deal with. After clearing those out, we also discover how the patients were first treated at the start of the outbreak, and how quickly it got out of hand. The doctors and nurses had no idea what to treat, and would either become casualties to their patients once they fully turned into zombies, or became one themselves. The sad part is that there was a way to create a vaccine in this facility, but it was kept under wraps and obviously didn't see the light of day, as it's still split into two parts. So in order for Carlos to synthesize the vaccine, he must go to the 4th floor and the basement of the hospital to grab the vaccine base and the vaccine medium. Depending on which floor you go to first, the scenario changes quite a bit. If you happen to go to the 4th floor first, then you will come to find that Nikolai survived whatever happened to him in your playthrough, and he is doing his usual thing, by killing yet another member of their mercenary group. Right as he's about to put a bullet in Carlos, the guy he shot, whose name is Tyrell, pulls a pin from a grenade and blasts Nikolai out of a nearby window. The 4th floor also happens to have one of the most outlandish puzzles in the series so far. And that is pretty much this game's version of the box moving puzzle. That being the cabinet moving puzzle in room 402. In order to complete this so-called puzzle, you must move a cabinet that is sitting in the middle of the room into one of 4 corners. If you get it right, a nearby painting falls off a wall to reveal a safe with the vaccine base inside it. If you get it wrong though, then you get electrocuted. And that's not even the worst part, as the game then has you do the walk of shame out of the room, so you can restore it back to its original state when you walk back in. To find this puzzle solution, all you need to do is go into room 401 and see where the cabinet is placed. Then you need to mirror that placement in room 402. So, if it's in the lower right corner, then you must move the cabinet into the lower left corner. Where does this game tell you how to do this, you might ask? Absolutely nowhere. I blame Shinji Mikami for this. Okay, not really. I know I give the box moving puzzles in this series a lot of shit, but I'd rather do that than this dumb puzzle any day of the goddamn week. If you went to the basement first, then you will come across Tyrell, who holds you at gunpoint. He rants about a traitor among their group who shot him, remarking that they had gray hair and an ugly mug. Huh, kinda sounds like Nikolai. Sadly, Tyrell pretty much goes out the same way as the other scenario. That being him getting shot and then blowing up. But this time, not on his own terms, as Nikolai pulled a Looney Tunes or Spy vs. Spy act by placing a bomb in a nearby safe that Tyrell opens.
God, JC, a bomb! A bomb. It's remote controlled. Hold on. Get out of there. Just have to pull this wire.
In the next room is the vaccine medium base, and in order to turn it into the vaccine medium, Carlos must place it into a nearby synthesizer. Once powered up, the water from 2 nearby tanks that are holding Hunter Gammas in each of them is drained, and used for the machine. Now for the main puzzle segment for this section. In order to create the vaccine medium, both energy levels need to be leveled out in the middle. There are 5 levers. The 3 on top are labeled 1 through 3. The 2 on the bottom are labeled A and B, and each lever adjusts the levels differently. The way to solve this is by turning lever 1 first, lever 3 second, and lever A last. Or you can just spend a few minutes trying to brute force this thing by turning each of them randomly. With both the medium and base, Carlos combines the two to make the vaccine. But leaving the hospital isn't as simple as walking out the front door. First, the 2 tanks that had their water levels lowered weren't just there for set dressing, as I'm sure you surmised by this point. Because as soon as you walk towards the door leading out of the room, the 2 Hunter Gammas break out and attack you from each side. Let me tell you, this part sucks, and can seemingly work in your favor randomly. Either you get your shit kicked in because they attack you at the same time, with Carlos only being able to hit one due to their flanking strategy, or they will walk into walls for a bit, which leaves an opening for the door. There is no worse feeling than dying here and getting sent back to the save room at the start of the hospital. Another thing thrown your way is that Nikolai left a parting gift for you at the entrance of the hospital. You'd think that this was a sweet gesture, but this is Nikolai that we're talking about, which means his gifts are C4 charges set to blow after 7 seconds. If you aren't quick on your feet, then poor Carlos gets caught in the blast. But if you make it out in time, then you get to witness the hospital vaporized off the map. Things couldn't get any worse for this guy, right?
Wrong!
As soon as the dude enters the clock tower, you hear some very familiar music. That being Nemesis's track. Kinda weird saying Nemesis like that. Nemesis is. Right when you walk into the main hall, he makes his grand entrance by breaking through a wall and crashing down on the table below.
Oh yeah!
After all of his beatings, the power limiter he was wearing is starting to come apart, which means Nemesis is mutating, as I'm sure you can see. You can choose to fight it, or beeline it to the chapel safe room to give Jill the antidote. On the other hand, though, there is an absolutely hilarious scene you can miss in this fight. If you run to the chapel door with Nemesis following behind you, he will turn his attention to the door. If he breaks through it, we are given this amazing scene.
Don't worry, Jill. This chapel is safe.
That funny scene aside, Carlos makes it to Jill and gives her the antidote. When she wakes up, they have some pretty awkward dialogue about Nemesis still being alive, and not giving up on killing Jill.
No way! That monster just doesn't give up!
What?
If you manage to defeat Nemesis as Carlos before this scene, then the dialogue will change, with him saying that he just had a run-in with it.
I just fought with that monster.
Carlos then tells Jill that he has to go do a few things, like return some videotapes, but before he leaves, he brings her up to speed on Nikolai, telling her that he can't be trusted and is their enemy. Gee, never would have guessed on that one. A quick side note to add here is that when this game started, it took place before the events of Resident Evil 2. But now, after Jill woke up from her nap, the events of Resident Evil 2 have passed, with Leon and Claire having made it out of the city. Alright, side note over. We now assume control of Jill once again, and no matter if you defeated it as Carlos or not, Nemesis will burst through the dining room door to attack Jill inside the piano room. I also figure now is the best time to talk about its change in design and moveset. Since it's all tentacle-y, Nemesis has a whole different set of moves to use on you during its upcoming fights. While its ranged weapons may be gone, its tentacles make up for it, as it can now grab, slash, and drag Jill from afar. This can lead to it comboing your ass until you are dead, as the close quarters you fight it in will give it the opportunity to keep grabbing you over and over and over again. While its moveset may be more annoying to deal with, I do like that the game shows that our continuous run-ins with Nemesis are leaving their battle scars. Its transformation is just so damn good in this game, and when you see it for the first time, you wonder how much worse it's gonna get. Especially if you played Resident Evil 2 and saw how both Mr. X and William changed throughout the game. Once you defeat or outrun Nemesis, you can now leave the clock tower for good, and head towards the Raccoon City Park. While Jill jogs through here, I want to talk about the game's graphics. If you know anything about the old Resident Evil games, then you know that they use something called pre-rendered backgrounds. I went into detail on what these are in the last Resident Evil video I made, which I will shamelessly plug right at this very moment. The thing I really want to talk about is the variety of locations this game has and their backgrounds. The ones used in this game, in my opinion, are miles better than Resident Evil 2's heavy use of gray indoor locations. There is just a lot more color used here, and the environments are varied enough to not get old. You go through the Raccoon City streets, the clock tower, the hospital, and even a park, which you see right here. This helps the game feel fresh and not so bland, which helps a lot when it comes to replayability. Obviously, they use the same method to make the pre-rendered backgrounds in this game as they did in Resident Evil 2, but this is where they truly shine for me. Sadly, this is the final Resident Evil to use these backgrounds on the PlayStation 1. Which isn't too bad, because the only other RE release left on this console is Gun Survivor. Funnily enough though, after they stop using these types of backgrounds for a short time, they go right back to it with the Resident Evil 1 remake and RE0. The use of these backgrounds help the game feel less old graphically, especially when compared to other games that use 3D backgrounds that were released around the same time. Plus, the nostalgia I feel for this shit is over the top, so I guess that helps. The park houses yet another puzzle, that apparently is some sort of attraction if the signpost next to it is anything to go off of. Inside a panel are 4 cogs. You get 6 moves and must place them in the correct order to drain the fountain. The solution is to place the black cogs in the upper, middle, and right spots, and the white cogs on the bottom spots. If done correctly, then the entire fountain will drain, which leads to yet another sewer section. Also, this is one of the few puzzles that doesn't change throughout each playthrough. So once you know the solution, then the puzzle should become second nature from here on out. After a short trip through the sewers, Jill comes out on the other side to a cemetery. Bad spot to be in during a zombie apocalypse. I mean, they're just dying to get out.
Holy Jesus.
The other end of the cemetery is just your ordinary shed. But this is Resident Evil, and Umbrella pulls some insane shit just to hide their secrets. And to discover the ones in here, Jill must light the fireplace. And it's not to make the place more comfortable, but she does it to get rid of the firewood because she couldn't be fucked to move them. Then, she uses a nearby iron pipe to break the wall in the fireplace, which leads to a secret communications room that Umbrella used to track the progress of the virus as it wreaked havoc throughout Raccoon City. A report on the table mentions the virus has mutated and is now infecting plants and animals, which is definitely not foreshadowing. But that's not all. A secondary report mentions that the military plans on executing their plan to obliterate the city at daybreak. Jill grabs a key that can be used to exit the park and crawls out the hole in the fireplace she just made. Waiting for her on the other end is Nikolai. This rambunctious scamp lays out the entire Umbrella playbook regarding the city's outbreak, saying that their employer sent them here to recover data regarding the infected. But things didn't go according to plan when the merc team they sent started getting slaughtered. The cabin then begins to shake, and Nikolai apparently knows what it is as he chalks it up to a mutant. And boy is he right, because as soon as Jill steps outside, the whole entire graveyard becomes a sinkhole, and the big ol' Alaskan bullworm from earlier attacks. This fight can be kind of brutal, as there is absolutely no wiggle room in the boss arena. So if the worm pops up near you and you don't have anywhere to go, then you're taking damage. This ends up being a battle of attrition, so the more damage you deal out and at quicker intervals, then the less painful this is going to be for you. With Wormy now defeated, Jill can use the key to leave the park. This leads towards an abandoned factory, and while walking across a very unkept wooden bridge, Nemesis attacks Jill right from under it. It then jumps on the bridge and a live section choice pops up. The choices you get are to either push its ass off the bridge, or to leap off of it yourself. This live section greatly changes the remainder of the game, so I will once again go through the whole entire section for one choice, and then cover the other one up until the two paths meet. If you choose to push Nemesis off, then you get this amazing scene of Jill juking it, and then simply pushing its ass off the bridge. Inside the factory, Jill once again comes across Carlos, who tells her that the military is going to launch a nuclear missile at daybreak to wipe Raccoon City off the map. Jill is for some reason in disbelief, even though she read a report about it not even 20 minutes ago. With there being little time left, the two split up to search for a way out of the city. In order to get through most of the facility, Jill must do two things. The first is to turn on the power for the safety system, and the second is to partake in the most difficult puzzle in the entire game, and to some people, the entire series. If you know which one I'm talking about, then you're having PTSD flashbacks of it already. And if not, then you are one lucky soul. The puzzle I'm talking about is the dreaded water sample puzzle. To start this hellish puzzle off, Jill inserts a water sample into the console, and then a bunch of white blocks appear at the top of it, with 3 differently colored blocks below, labeled A through C. In order to complete this puzzle, you need to recreate the white block combination at the top of the console with the 3 colored ones below. At first, you'll probably think that you'll get through this quickly, and have this type of reaction.
Bang! Gun! I am invincible!
But it's not that simple, and you'll eventually find yourself having this reaction instead.
Speak to me!
I cannot tell you how long I've stared at this screen, both as a kid and as an adult. The funny thing is that there are only 4 variations of this puzzle, but with how this puzzle works, you'll have a difficult time remembering their solutions. I'm not saying it's not possible, just that it's quite difficult and mostly requires countless playthroughs to do. Which I've done and have not remembered, so you're probably better than me. With that nightmare now over with, the door leading to the treatment room unlocks. While on the way there, I want to talk about the story of this factory, as it's quite disturbing. Umbrella set up shop here to dispose of the corpses of the civilians they experimented on, while under the guise of an abandoned factory. Since it looked abandoned, there were some moments where people broke in to explore. This sealed their fates, however, as they were either shot and killed, or shot and left alive in order to perform these experiments on them. Once Umbrella was done with them, they would then dispose of the bodies in something called the treatment pool, which dissolved things left inside it. Obviously, all of this wasn't just for human test subjects, as they would dispose of BOWs, which is bioorganic weapon for short, if you didn't know, and any evidence alongside it. You gotta give it to Umbrella here though, as they constantly surpass all of our previous notions of their inhumanity. Past the previously locked door, Jill gets shot at by none other than Nikolai, who for some reason just won't die. He monologues because he's evil, and tells Jill that he will kill all of the other Umbrella supervisors in order to increase the price of the information he gathered from Raccoon City. The reason he is attempting to kill Jill is because they put a bounty on her head and will reward him for the confirmation of her death. But like all of the evil characters that monologue in this series, he meets his totally unfortunate end when Nemesis grabs him from above and kills him. Poor Nikolai. Gone way too late. Past the now deceased Nikolai is the treatment room, and upon entering, the door locks and the operation begins. What operation, you may ask? Well, it doesn't really say, but we can surmise that it will result in Jill's death after the 4-minute timer is up. Jokes aside, the operation is the dissolution of pretty much anything inside the room, as acid will be poured in it. The floor will then open up and drop anything left over into the treatment pool I mentioned earlier. To add to Jill's problems, Nemesis shows up once again and seemingly from out of nowhere. And during its attack, it hits a valve behind Jill, which releases acid right onto it, resulting in pieces of its body falling off. This is a giant ass hint thrown right at you to help you defeat this version of Nemesis. While you can fight it normally here, the amount of damage you need to deal is quite high, so using the valves is a great way to trim off a lot of its health, which also has the added effect of burning its body parts right off. Just look at this one for instance. Its head falls right off. Sadly, that doesn't mean it's dead though, but after enough damage is dealt, Nemesis falls to the ground. In a fortuitous turn of events, a keycard that unlocks the door slides out of the pocket of a dead scientist. And after leaving, all the bodies in the treatment room, along with Nemesis, are dropped into the treatment pool, thus leading to its end. This isn't the time to take a breather though, as the facility confirms a missile attack, and advises everyone to evacuate. You know, it's quite the specific thing to have prepared to be announced. Like, did they foresee a missile being launched at the town and thought it would be best to have it set up to announce it? Also, how does it detect a missile is coming? There's no one alive to operate any alarms or satellites to see the incoming missile, so how does it announce this? I just thought it was an odd way to have an announcement placed here, as we already know that they were planning to launch a missile anyway from both Carlos and the report from the cemetery shed. I guess I'm thinking too much into this, so I'll once again shut up. The keycard she obtained from the treatment room is used to open the shutter leading to the communications tower. Funnily enough, Carlos contacts her just as she enters the room. He tells her that he has a ride out and to take the device sitting on top of the console. The device tracks the missile's distance, which becomes the game's self-destruct sequence timer. At least it's something different this time around though. Jill takes the ladder that's in the center of the room down, and makes her way past a yard full of trashed cars. This is where I will stop this segment for the moment, and go over the changes that you would experience if you chose to jump off the bridge at the start of the abandoned factory section.
Damn!
She won't be in Resident Evil 4.
After Jill leaps off the bridge, she finds herself in the sewer section that leads to the water sample puzzle. She gets careless here, as she quickly ends up surrounded by zombies that were just chilling under the water. But have no fear, cause Carlos is here for some reason. He clears out the zombies and brings Jill up to speed on the whole missile issue. This time though, he gets a little too close and puts his hand on her face to warn her about Nikolai. Something else you could do during this section is make the key that unlocks the weapon storage. You just need to grab the key that was encoded and take it to the encoding machine near the water sample puzzle. Then, you just need to take it down the elevator that's been powered on when you turned on the safety system and unlock the door. This is well worth the time and effort, as you get the beautiful and extremely powerful M66 rocket launcher. If you know anything about action movies, then you know that this one pretty much resembles the M202 Flash that was shown in the Arnold Schwarzenegger classic, Commando. Side note, wasn't it weird that they had a rocket launcher and a metric ton of other lethal armaments inside an army surplus store in LA? I get it's a cheesy action movie, but man, that shit was stupid.
Fuck you.
Useless rant aside, this rocket launcher will come in handy in this scenario in the near future, so you'll want to hold on to it. Inside the corridor you would enter if you push Nemesis off the bridge is Nikolai, who shoots at Jill as she nears the corner of the hall. She stylishly rolls out of the way, which gives him ample time to close yet another goddamn shutter, with this one blocking the way to the communication tower. When Jill makes it to the outside of the treatment room, Nikolai obviously isn't here, as he was last seen headed towards the comms tower. Speaking of comms tower, that is where one of the bigger changes in this scenario is at. Once Jill grabs the radar that tracks the missile, Nikolai shows up in a fully armed helicopter and opens fire on Jill. You can either choose to return fire, or try to negotiate with him?
What the fuck is that?
You'll obviously make the choice to return fire because Nikolai is a dipshit, and because the other choice sounds really fucking lame. With the M66 rocket launcher in hand, it just takes one rocket to down Nikolai and his helicopter, which is a pretty fitting end if you ask me. Carlos once again shows up late, which is pretty much the theme for him in this game. Jill then gives him the bad news about the escape vehicle, and Carlos takes the news pretty hard at first, but quickly changes his tune and refuses to give up.
This isn't over yet.
He presses some switches so he looks like he's doing something, and then runs off once again to who knows where. Jill goes the same route as the previous scenario and ends up in the yard with all the trash vehicles. The two scenarios have converged for the last time, as we are nearing the end of the game. Am I forgetting anything? Oh yeah, that lame selection from a short bit ago. If you, for whatever reason, decide to negotiate with that psychopath Nikolai, he will end up flying off into the sunset. Or I guess in this game's case, night. Getting absolutely no retribution for all the deplorable shit he pulled in Raccoon City. What a lame choice. Alright, back to the end of the game. The yard Jill ends up in turned out to be a full-on battle between the military and a couple of tyrants that Umbrella released. And in the next room, we even see a dead tyrant that has been fully evolved, which are all pretty nice details that didn't have to be added, but I'm glad they did. Past all the corpses is a giant-looking generator thing that is somehow sapping the power away from the only door that leads out of here. As it turns out, the generator isn't a generator. It's actually a rail cannon, and it must be powered on in order for Jill to escape. This monotonous task involves the age-old Resident Evil tradition of pushing stuff. The things she pushes are batteries that are used to charge the cannon. But this doesn't go as planned though. After the first battery is inserted, an unrecognizable Nemesis crawls its way into the room for one final battle. The battle isn't straightforward either, as it requires you to insert all three batteries in order to charge the rail cannon. You then must wait a millennia for it to charge, and once it is, you need to lead the giant crawling flesh bag Nemesis into its firing path. It's not as simple as it sounds though, as you will be dealing with Nemesis spitting acid at you from afar and whacking the shit out of you if it gets close. That doesn't even bring into the equation of you leading the asshole into the rail cannon's way, which can easily become irritating if it doesn't do what you want it to do. It's worsened even further by the waiting time between each shot from the cannon, as Nemesis could be in its firing path while it's prepping its next shot one moment, and out of the way when it actually goes off the next. However, I did find that if you do enough damage to Nemesis, it will crawl back to where the fight started and sit while it heals. The spot it sits in also happens to be in its firing path of the cannon. I could be wrong about this, and Nemesis could have just decided to go full-on idiot for me during the fight, but who knows. Once Nemesis is struck by the projectile from the rail cannon, the fight is over, and you are given one final live selection choice. Do you stay and finish the bastard off? Or head towards the exit and let the missile do all the work? If you stay, you will get one of the best lines and best scenes in the whole entire series, which I will let play in full without my shit commentary.
You want stars? I'll give you stars.
Damn, what a magnificent scene. If you left, then that's pretty much it. But there are differences to the ending depending on if you pushed Nemesis off the bridge or leapt off it yourself. If you pushed it off, then Carlos will be waiting for you with a helicopter ready to leave the city. If you leapt off the bridge, then Carlos will have contacted a pilot who comes to your rescue. That pilot turns out to be Barry Burton himself. Or at least the side and back side of his head for some odd reason. Jill even refers to him as you and doesn't use his name, which I found really odd.
Is it you?
Are you ready to finish this?
Well, regardless of your choice, the missile arrives just as you are out of its range, with it wiping Raccoon City and its inhabitants off the map. Jill then vows to take Umbrella down as they ride off into the sunset. The game ends with a news report of what happened, and the estimated number of casualties is over 100,000 people. But don't be upset, because we got this 90s ass song for the credits. What an absolute banger of a track. Huh. Yeah, I'm never saying that again. Well, that is the end of Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. After completing the game, you get an epilogue of Jill that shows she went to join Chris at his hideout after escaping Raccoon City, only to find his knife stabbed into the floor with some blood. She left right after, believing he was alive and would search for him so they could end Umbrella together. This epilogue is 1 out of 8. In order to see the others, you must complete the game, and not just once more, because that will only get you Epilogue 2. This means that you have to complete the game 8 fucking times. 8! That's the only way you'll see all the epilogues. Well, if the internet wasn't a thing. I'm going to be very honest. Even though I adore this game, I could only do it 4 times for this video. So I'll just look up and add the other 4 to this part because I just can't run through this game anymore in such a short amount of time, or else I would lose my mind. Now for the remaining epilogues. Chris is writing a letter to Claire, asking for her forgiveness. As he finishes up, he takes notice of a woman walking by that is around her age. Shortly after, he hears that Claire was captured by Umbrella while looking for him. Barry is seen saying goodbye to his wife and daughters, as he needs to repay his team for his betrayal at the Spencer Mansion, even though this means leaving his family for a time. Leon is being spoken to by a US government agent, and it appears that they are strong-arming him into some sort of deal by holding Sherry as leverage. And with no regret or hesitation, he responds to the agent. Claire is seen with Leon and Sherry right after the events of Resident Evil 2. Leon tells her to go and search for Chris, and while she starts to leave them behind, she makes a promise to return, and then disappears into the wilderness near Raccoon City. Sherry is seen being asked if she has any living relatives by an army officer. All the while, she holds herself in her arms, and tries to reassure herself that Claire will come back and not forget about her. Ada, or I guess not Ada, is saying goodbye to that name. She looks in the mirror and feels the scar on her ab that she received in Raccoon City, saying that it's not her scar, but Ada's. While she says goodbye to this name, she can't stop herself from crying. Hunk is sitting inside a helicopter, while its pilot refers to him as Mr. Death, saying that he is always the only one to survive. But Hunk doesn't respond to him because he does not care, and with a smile, he thinks to himself that the Death cannot die. And thanks to the internet, that is all of the epilogues in Resident Evil 3. Overall, my opinion of this game remains the same as it always has, that being my favorite one in the whole series. It has everything I want in a game: a difficult, seemingly unkillable boss that stalks you throughout, randomized elements that range from items to enemies, and the life selection choices that change so much throughout the game. Another thing I love is that it stars Jill from RE1, who is my favorite character in the series. Jill also received a personality like the cast of RE2, which isn't a jab at the original RE1 by any means, it's just that the mansion was the character of that game, with everyone else being secondary. Throughout Resident Evil 3, we see her personality shine. She was always strong and capable, as we saw in RE1, but here, we see how the mansion incident affected her. Not only is she more capable with the extra survival tactics she uses in the game, but we witness how mad she is at the city's lack of strength to push Umbrella out before the outbreak. She is also a lot more unforgiving and trusting, as we see with her interactions with Carlos and his fellow members at the start of the game. Though she shows growth with this, as she comes to rely on Carlos, and even places her trust in him as they form a sort of camaraderie. Though he seems to want a bit more than that at certain points, which Jill doesn't entertain in the slightest. As for Carlos, he has a ton of personality right out the gate, being witty and unafraid to hit on Jill a couple of minutes after seeing one another. But he quickly sheds that attitude, and relies on Jill as she does for him, showing that he truly does care for her and doesn't want to lose her. I mean, the guy cured the virus just for her. He also isn't afraid to hide his actual emotions around Jill, and sometimes, depending on the scenario, will have a breakdown right in front of her. Both he and Jill are very believable in this game, acting heroic, but can also show the mental and physical strains that someone in their position could show. And that's guesstimating, because we obviously haven't had a zombie outbreak in real life. Yet. The game's antagonists, while not being fully fleshed out like the leads, are at the very least entertaining. Nikolai is clearly a bad dude right from the get-go. Even as a kid, I knew he was going to be up to no good when you first talked to him in the cable car. He doesn't really get any more growth than that. Just a bad guy who likes doing bad things throughout the game. Nemesis, on the other hand, has absolutely no personality aside from being task-driven, as the only thing he'll ever spout out of his big-ass mouth is stars. Which is Nemesis pretty much pointing out who it has to kill. But it's a tyrant, so I didn't expect it to start having emotions midway through. It's doing exactly what I'd want and expect it to do in the game, that being the unkillable monster that hunts you down, which Nemesis does extremely well. It's a lot more terrifying than Mr. X and William Birkin from RE2, and even combined, I think Nemesis is more of a threat. It will pop up out of nowhere, seemingly at random, to try and ruin your day and waste your ammo. For me personally, this is where Resident Evil perfected the boss monsters in the series, and it hasn't been outdone since. The feeling of dread you get once you hear its music start playing is second to none, and Nemesis will probably always be my favorite enemy in the series. Which leads to my monster boss ranking of Resident Evil 3. Welcome to my boss ranking for Resident Evil 3. I'm just gonna jump into it, so let's get started. The first boss is Nemesis. It's the titular character. Scary, strong, fast, powerful. What's not to like? That's an S tier. The second boss is Nemesis. Pretty much the same thing. Strong, powerful, scary. What's not to like? It's just more of the same thing. The third boss, it's Nemesis. So, S tier. Alright, we got something different here. The Worm, Gravedigger. It's lame. It's a worm. I mean, let's be real. I did something here to make it better. It's crudely put together, but I slapped on a picture of Nemesis on a worm just to make it better because it's Nemesis. So, Nemi Worm, that's S tier. Gravedigger, that's a D tier. It's lame. It's a worm. All right, we got we got Nemesis again. Yeah, let's just speed through this. All right, here we go again. We got something new. Nikolai's helicopter. I'm gonna be straight with you. I never fought this thing without a rocket launcher. I mean, it's just a fucking helicopter and it's Nikolai. I gave it the same treatment that I did the worm, where I crudely slapped on an image of Nemesis just to make it better. I mean, let's be real here. This would be a better fight. Nemicopter, S tier. Nikolai's helicopter, D tier. And now the final boss of the game, which is Nemesis, S tier. And for some reason, I got a picture of Don Cheadle. S tier. Alright, thanks for watching. Well, that was obnoxious. Beyond the main game, there is another mode that the series is well known for after its inception in this game. That being the famed Mercenaries mode. In this mode, you choose from one of three characters. That being Carlos, Mikhail, and Nikolai. Each one of them has their own special loadout. For Carlos, he has his trusty assault rifle, the Eagle handgun, 90 bullets for said handgun, and 3 mixed herbs. This is pretty much the medium difficulty of the mode, since his loadout isn't too powerful nor too weak. Mikhail has the best loadout of them all, with him having the shotgun, the magnum, the fucking rocket launcher, 21 shells for his shotgun, 18 magnum rounds, and 1 mixed herb. As I'm sure you've guessed, this is the easy difficulty for this mode. That leaves just the hard difficulty, which goes to Nikolai, who seemingly forgot he was in the middle of a zombie-ridden hellhole, as he only comes with a pistol, a knife, 1 blue herb, and 3 healing sprays. You heard that right. He came with absolutely no extra ammo for his gun. What a moron. Loadouts aside, the premise of this mode is that whoever you chose at the start had a bomb placed inside them. And yes, that's as outlandish as it sounds. They then must make their way to the warehouse save room that is at the start of the story, with the starting point being at the cable car where Jill met the other Umbrella mercenaries. This must be accomplished in under 2.5 minutes, and it's not just a simple stroll through Raccoon City either, as there are enemies littered throughout that will impede your progress, from regular zombies and hunters all the way to Nemesis itself, who appears multiple times in the city. This sounds downright impossible, doesn't it? How do they expect you to make it through the city with all those enemies in such little time? Well, there is a way to add extra time to that annoying timer. And the way to do that is by killing enemies. Depending on what enemy, how many in a small amount of time you killed, and how you killed them, all affect the time increase differently. For example, killing a single zombie will only net you 3 extra seconds, but killing 2 of them pretty much simultaneously will add a multiplier to that time. So instead of 6 seconds, you'll get 7. Or blasting a group of zombies by an explosive barrel can even net you a whole entire minute of time. Nemesis also isn't here for the added difficulty, as it will give you a massive time boost upon its defeat. This changes even more depending on what type of Nemesis mutation you defeated. Beyond killing the enemies for extra time, there are also people that need your help throughout the city. When you come across one of them, you must clear the enemies out around them, and once you do, you will get 20 seconds added to your timer. But you will also receive an item from them as well. The item changes depending on who you chose as your character. For instance, you will come across Dario Rosso surrounded by zombies at the gas station. If you helped him as Mikhail, he will hand you 14 shotgun shells. If you helped him as Carlos, then he will hand you 60 pistol rounds. There are 6 people in need of your help, and each one of them gives you certain items depending on your character. To add extra stress to you, the people in need of your help won't survive forever, and will die if you don't reach them in a certain amount of time. When, or if you reach the end, you will be greeted by Brian Irons, who is sitting in the middle of the abyss for some reason. He gives you your freedom and a reward. That reward being cold, hard cash. And the reason you're going to want that cash is because you can use it to purchase infinite ammo weapons from the store that can be used in the story mode. The choices are an unlimited assault rifle for 2,000, the unlimited Gatling gun for 3,000, the infinite rocket launcher for 4,000, and finally, the infinite ammo for every gun case thingy for $9,999. There are many variables at play when you total up your cash at the end of a run. The better the ranking you receive, the more cash earned. But you also earn cash for defeating enemies. Each enemy gives you a certain amount of money when defeated, and the more deadly they are, the more money you earn from it, which obviously means you can net the most cash from killing Nemesis. After a couple of runs through this mode, you'll eventually find a path that suits you best, and that can earn you a good amount of money from. Granted, you can earn the most by doing absolutely everything, but there are a lot of ways to die here, and with most things in Resident Evil 3, it comes down to RNG. Once you've got enough cash, you can spend it on all of the rewards, and pretty much make the game a cakewalk. So I'd recommend playing the game normally once or twice if you have the PC version before obtaining this gear. The reason I say this is because this mode is already unlocked for the PC and Dreamcast versions, while the PS1 and GameCube versions require at least one completion of the story to unlock it. Another thing that the PC and Dreamcast versions have unlocked right from the start are the outfits, which is kind of stupid because that means they miss out on the boutique that you get the key for once you completed the game once for the PS1 and GameCube versions. The upside to this is that the PC and Dreamcast versions are given 2 more alternate outfits for Jill to wear, beyond the 5 that came in the PS1 and GameCube versions. The first is her biker outfit, which is an all-black leather suit with a red belt. The second is her Stars outfit from the first game. The third is her disco outfit, which kind of looks like business attire too. The fourth is a regular police outfit with a skirt. The fifth is Regina's outfit from Dino Crisis, which is a Capcom game created by Shinji Mikami that came out a few months before Resident Evil 3. The game is pretty much Resident Evil but with dinosaurs. The last 2 are only on the PC and Dreamcast versions of the game, and the first one of them is a color-swapped normal Jill outfit, with her top now being black and her skirt being blue. And the final outfit is a casual outfit that sports the same colors as her original outfit. And that's it with all the unlocks and modes in Resident Evil 3. Compared to RE2, it lacks content, but the whole series beside the dreaded 6th entry and the remake of 2 lack against the game anyway, so it's not much of a downside. With everything out of the way, let's talk about one of the best things in the game, and that is its audio. I can sit here and talk about most of the sound effects that are within Resident Evil 3, but I'd just be repeating myself as they are pretty much in line with Resident Evil 2's sound effects. The summary of which are that they all sound great. Zombies groan off screen to warn you where they're at, the guns all sound powerful, and the footsteps are footsteps, even with Jill's killer knee-high boots. The stuff I really want to go over is the game's music and voice actors. Let's first start off with the music, which was composed by longtime Resident Evil composer Masami Ueda, alongside Sayori Maeda. I'm really sorry if I butchered your names. Let me tell you, both of these guys did a fantastic job, as this is one of the best soundtracks in the series. From the tense to the calming, every track here is top tier. The obvious standout, as I'm sure many of you know, is Free From Fear, the game's save room theme. I don't know how they did it, but they managed to make a song that is both soothing and terrifying at the same time, which is pretty spot on for the game's experience, as when you enter the save room, you know you're not permanently safe, because you need to leave it at some point, and that Nemesis is somewhere out there waiting for you. This is my absolute favorite save room theme in the entire series, with only one coming close, and even then, this one is still far above. But enough talk about the save room theme, as the other songs in the soundtrack deserve recognition as well. Another great track is The City of Ruin. This track plays when you first set foot into the streets of Raccoon City, where you see the death and destruction firsthand. The song is extremely eerie and foreboding, which helps build the atmosphere immensely. Speaking of foreboding, let's talk about the track Feel the Tension. Once you hear it playing, then you know you're in a world of hurt, as Nemesis is bound to rear its ugly head. Nothing even needs to be shown on screen for this track to fill you with dread, and hearing it for the first time in the RPD was absolutely terrifying as a child. And to be honest, I put the game down for a long time afterwards, as it was too much for me. I could go on and on about this soundtrack for ages, but I don't want to drag this video out. So I'll just talk about two more tracks. The first is one that some people may not have heard, which is a shame to be honest, as it's quite good. That one being the options menu track. It's basic, as its only instrument is a piano, but it's haunting that way, as it gives a feeling of isolation, along with the running theme of dread that most of the soundtrack has. It's short at only 55 seconds long, but with how it's arranged, you can get lost in one of its extended versions quite easily. The last track I'll go over is Nemesis's theme. I mean, how could I not? While the Feel the Tension track might fill you with dread, this one will fill you with immense fear. You know you're fucked when you hear this, as Nemesis is either rushing you down from out of nowhere, or you're already face to face with it. Nothing beats this boss theme in the series, and while it could be nostalgia, I personally think it's because of how well both Nemesis and this track are designed. They coexist perfectly, and would suffer if one didn't have the other. I'm no music critic here, and I'm definitely not great at talking about it either, but this soundtrack is perfect in every aspect, and I hope my basic explanation did some justice. Now on to the voice actors, and to my surprise, many of them have, or had until recently, pretty active resumes. And like Resident Evil 2, the game's voice acting has steadily increased in quality from the first game. The voice of Mikhail, Benedict Campbell, has done a lot of work in theater, with a handful also done in TV animated series, most notably Papa Bear in the 2003 Berenstain Bears, and King K. Rool in Donkey Kong Country and its return series in 2023. The crazy thing is that his only video game role is Mikhail in Resident Evil 3, and has since never done another role in a video game again. The poor Brad Vickers is voiced by Evan Saba, who also hasn't done a voice role in a video game since, but he has done a bunch of small television roles leading all the way up to 2023, where he played yet another character named Brad in the miniseries Painkiller. Nikolai's voice actor, Roger Honeywell, hasn't done any more VO work for a video game just like his previous cast members. He's had small roles in TV leading up to 2023, and funnily enough, he and Evan Saba both had roles on the television series Murdoch Mysteries, which I have absolutely no idea about. Okay, on to the main cast. Tony Rosato, who voiced Dario Rosso... Wait, wasn't I talking about the main cast? Oh yeah, I was. Tony Rosato, who apparently voiced Nemesis, also did the voice for Dario Rosso, which is quite shocking if you think about it, as the two parts are such polar opposites, from sounding like Newman from Seinfeld to growling the word stars as a hulking tyrant is quite the change-up. But alas, he pulled it off. Tony also had a pretty large resume, with the most notable being his time at Saturday Night Live. His work lasted all the way up until 2017, when he sadly passed away from a heart attack at the age of 62. The voice of Carlos, Vincent Carrazza, has done works for a ton of projects, with the notable ones being the voice of Darian Shields, aka Tuxedo Mask, in the English dub of the animated series Sailor Moon from 1995 to 2000. The other notable one is the voices of Zexion and Ienzo from Kingdom Hearts, which I find hilarious since I made that stupid joke at the beginning of this video, with no notion that someone in this cast did voice work for that series. That just leaves our main lead, Jill Valentine, who is voiced by Catherine Disher. Catherine's resume is the largest of the groups, and has done voice work for a multitude of animated series. She did some small roles in Sailor Moon, but her most notable was playing Jean Grey in the 90s X-Men animated series, which must have been a very popular place for Capcom to hire voice actors, since Claire's voice actress from the original RE2, Allison Court, did the voice for Jubilee. And Leon's voice actor for the same RE2, Paul Haddad, did the voice for Archon and Quicksilver. A year later, Catherine was able to reprise her role as Jill for one last time in Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And that is, hopefully, everything with Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. Overall, I love and will always love this entry in the series the most, as it had a tremendous impact on me when it comes to video games and horror media. While it may not be the best in the series because of RE2 and 4, I personally think it's the best, mainly because of what made it different. Obviously, Nemesis was a huge reason why this game did so great, but the live selection choices, their results, and the randomized sections made for a highly replayable experience. Its cast of characters were great, and its setting of Raccoon City made for an unforgettable experience. It also had a long-lasting effect on the series with its implementation of the Mercenaries mode, which quickly became a fan favorite. And, just like Resident Evil 2, RE3 got a remake in 2020. But it's a whole different experience that's far from its original, which was a problem for me and many others. And when compared, it's a lot more different from its original than RE2 is to its remake, as those were pretty much the same in most aspects. But this is all for another time, as it's a can of worms I dread opening. The series after this point will shift once again, as they get rid of the live selection stuff for good, which is quite the shame in my opinion. The next entry I'll be covering is not Resident Evil 4, but instead is Code Veronica, which once again stars Claire Redfield from RE2. Before I disappear once again, if you've seen any of my other videos, then you know I'm not solely a Resident Evil channel, and will cover a vast majority of genres and series, either from what my dumb brain thinks of, or, if you don't mind, then a suggestion of a game. If something comes to mind, then please feel free to share your suggestions. Well, that's it for me once again. I hope you liked the video, and if you did, then please leave a like. If not, then please let me know where I can improve. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and hope to see you in the next video, which I have absolutely no idea what it's going to be on. And before I go, I just saw the Resident Evil 9 trailer, so I guess Raccoon City was not wiped off the map. Well, I'm not fixing the script, so screw it.